What is going on, guys? 953, you're doing another video, and welcome back to another episode of Umineko When They Cry. Last time I left off, the first murder has occurred, and as you can see, 6 people are dead right here. Sanin, Goda, Rosa, Kiri, Rudolf, and Kraus are all dead. All of their heads have been smashed to make them somewhat unrecognizable. And yeah, we're just going to be continuing from here. But before I get into this, I definitely want to say the fact that Eva and Hideyoshi are both alive is definitely suspicious. But the other thing that I've been thinking about is the servants, like, they were the ones with the keys to the shed. And Cannon found the bodies first. Well, he didn't really find the bodies. He found the shed with the drawing on it, but still, that's definitely really weird that he got there first. So I'm just gonna keep sussing Cannon and Eva, and yeah, hopefully I get some more clues this episode.
お待ちなさいよ。ここは犯行現場なんでしょ?
Oh yeah, and Natsui just ordered Genji to cover the
なら
bodies.
変に手を加えちゃダメよ。私たちは混乱してて現場に土足で踏み入っちゃったけど、それはきっと警察の捜査の邪魔になったわよ。
Natsui glared at Eva, offended. Objectively speaking, Eva was right. Even so, she glared at Eva as though accusing her of refusing to do those tragic corpses, which has been humiliated even after death, the simple kindness of covering their faces. Well, I mean, how can placing a terp just like... Well, actually, yeah, no, that probably would affect it, because then they get the blood stains on it, and then to think that the murder weapon was the terp. Yeah, no, I see that now. However, Eva had spoken both calmly and correctly, yet as much as I am kind of thinking Eva's not my favorite character, definitely correct on that, I guess. This horrible situation definitely wasn't an accident. It was a crime. Someone had killed it. Well, yeah, that much is obvious. It was a murder case. So they need to be careful to avoid disturbing the site any further. They had to do what little they could to aid the police, preserving the clues that might help catch the disturbable culprit.
私もエヴァさんに賛成。警察が来るまでここは手をつけずにしておくべきです。
奥様、いかがなさいますか。
そうですね。わかりました。ここを閉ざしなさい。それから念のためここに別の施錠をするように。
Yeah, it's also a good idea so a servant doesn't do it. Cause Cannon, you could have done it.
ええ、ここに来た時、シャッターの鍵は閉じていました。ということは、シャッターの鍵を使い、犯人が施錠したということです。
確かに通りや。じゃあここを開けた限り、犯人の指紋が残ってるんとちゃうんか。
Well, I mean, there's a window in the back. I mean, it could be a Danganronpa 2 case of just using a stepladder to climb out of the window.
警察に証拠として提出する価値はあるでしょうけど、カノン君が普通に持ってここを開けるのに使用しちゃったわ。多分カノン君の指紋も付着しちゃってるわよ。そしてその鍵はさっき源氏さんに手渡され、源氏さんも素手で受け取ってる。大した証拠にはなりそうにないわね。
Yeah, kinda's already
それは
past that
不用
point.
心でした。申し訳ございません。
源氏さん、この倉庫の鍵は他にもあるんか。
いいえ、この一つだけです。
ということは、犯人はその鍵を使用人室から持ち出し、そして律儀に元の場所に戻したちゅうことになるな。
Yeah, I mean, they'd want to hide it. I mean, if you did this, you'd want to hide it, I think. Well, no, actually, they're probably doing this to scare everyone. Oh, there's actually a cool diagram. Hideyoshi's theory sounded plausible, but it was actually very strange if you thought about it. Why would they go to all of the trouble of returning a key they stole? No, if you think about it even more deeply, there are some points that are even more bizarre. When a criminal hides a body, they're usually trying to delay the point at which it can be found, so they can use that time to escape. The 6 weren't necessarily killed here, but it was reasonable to assume that they were killed somewhere on this island, carried to the storehouse, and hidden to delay the discovery of the crime. And yet, the eerie magic circle scribbled on the storehouse shutter had eloquently indicated the location of the hidden corpses. Okay, yeah, no, someone definitely did this on purpose. Now, I know it was with the Beatrice things, but honestly, I don't I don't think that Beatrice was the one who did this. I think that this is definitely someone on this island, and they did it to hide their crime as that. I mean, it's the only thing that can make sense. Almost as though they wanted the corpses here to be discovered.
とにかく一度は犯人が開け閉めをした施錠だけでは犯人の手からもこの場所を保護する意味で施錠を新たにしたいと言っているのです。
いい案だと思います。私も賛成です。
Genji fished around inside the storehouse and unsealed a brand new padlock that had been inside a small box.
鍵はどうなさいますか？
私が持ちましょう。責任を持って警察に手渡します。
Natsuri took the key to the padlock from Genji's hand. After that, they all exited and lowered the shutter. And so the corpses were once again sealed behind that shutter, which was still covered with that creepy magic circle. Even though it's not drawn in the background, shutters often have a place in front where you can attach your own lock in addition to the main lock of the shutter. This was one of those types. In the midst of the roaring thunder and the pouring rain, the storehouse stood there ominously. With its closed shutter still covered in blood-like creepy substance, it swallowed up the bodies of the six. To Natsui, putting the new lock on wasn't mainly to preserve the scene for the police. She might have felt like she wanted to shut that mouth for all of eternity, to prevent that eerie beast from swallowing up any more victims.
さあ、行きましょう。皆さん、南條先生。ご足労をありがとうございました。現時は急いで警察に連絡を。
戻りましたら
What about the
すぐに
phone
連
lines?
絡します。
The adults left the storehouse. The ghastly magic circle drawn on the shutter kept the six bodies in its throat, looming eerily as the lightning occasionally lit it up. Yep, knew that was coming. If they ever hold on a scene for a while, they'll either do this transition or the other. Okay. Time has passed, definitely. Okay, so according to the epitaph, the next, like, that they said that each twilight, that one was the six people offered as key sacrifices. I think the second one was tearing apart the two that are closest? I don't know. All that could be heard was the sound of rain, the voices from the kids' TV program Maria was watching, and the engrossed Maria's cackling voice. In other words, what greeted them as they returned dumbfounded from this horrible, bizarre scene was the voice of Maria as he rode around laughing at the TV. Oh, this is gonna be tough. Those who returned to the room didn't know how to explain to Maria that her mother was dead and were trapped by a suffocating silence. At first, Maria returned the stairs with a dubious look, but when she saw that they realized they weren't trying to blame her for anything, she ignored them and again immersed herself in the TV program. The children wordlessly sat down heavily on the sofa. Their minds were probably blank from their state of shock. Everyone had already cried and mourned so much, but now they just vaguely sat there, their faces seeming to have lost all emotion. Only Ken had returned to his usual calm expression. However, that probably didn't mean he'd been able to wipe out the shock. Nothing was reflected in his eyes as he stared into empty space. Hideyoshi kept on fidgeting, and every time he remembered that horrible scene, he started muttering about how he couldn't believe it, how he couldn't have been something from this world, how it must have been the work of demons. Every now and then his muttering produced a question directed at Nanzo, but the latter kept repeating in a calm, doctor-like manner that nothing could be understood by one glancing at the scene, and that until the police arrived they wouldn't learn anything new. However, Nanzo only appeared calm next to Hideyoshi, who simply couldn't suppress his agitation and fear. In fact, Nanzo had also received a huge shock and his face was deathly pale. Maybe that atmosphere was why she tried to rouse their silence and take charge. Natsui appeared to be unchanged from her normal attitude, and briskly gave directions.
私はお父様のところへ行ってきます。現時は急ぎ警察へ連絡を。
かしこまりました。
私も一緒させていただいていい
Oh
かしら。
my god,
夏姫
shut
さん
up. Shut up. Actually, shut up.
クラウス兄さんがいなくなった以上、
Don't
お父様
even.
の補佐は私の仕事だもの。
Don't even get started on that.
その私が夏日姉さんに任せっきりで、ここでくつろいでいるわ
And
けに
it's
はい
not,
か
you
ない
can tell by her
わ。
face that she doesn't even mean it. Natsui was struck speechlessly by Eva's aggressive move in a situation like that. Yeah, no, she definitely has a role in this murder. I don't care whether it's culprit, someone who helped the culprit, I don't care. She is definitely involved in this murder. 100%. The one to take responsibility shouldn't be his wife, but herself, the next highly ranked in the family. Maybe she hadn't been at all happy when Natsui looked command without reference to her in such an extreme situation. However, even Eva's mind had run a blank from shock until a moment ago. She only came to her senses after Natsui started giving orders.
お好きになさるといいでしょう。
Natsui started walking without saying a word more. Eva followed behind her. As they did, oh my god, where have you been? It has been at least since like episode 5. This is episode 11. Where like you've been absent. She actually wasn't the kind of person to run around, so under normal conditions, most people would have taken her entrance as a sign that something was the matter. But because everyone was still stricken with shock, they hardly even noticed her.
奥様夏希姉さんならお父さんのところへ行ったですぐ戻ってくるやろ。どないしたんや熊沢さん。
それが食堂に血が
The ears of everyone in the pro were twitched. Everyone thought the same thing. I hope I misheard that. Any container can hold so much, and no one here would be capable of handling yet another tragedy. So they all thought it. I hope I misheard that.
なんやって食堂
朝食の準備に食堂に配膳に行ったら
The first one to start running was George. His hearse footsteps jogged Hideyoshi and Nanzo to their senses, and they chased after him. Battle and the others followed. They flew into the dining hall one after another, but they didn't find any change that might have caused Kumasawa to go pale. To those who had viewed the gruesome scene in the storehouse was a bit of an anticlimax. However, Kumasawa, who had followed them, pointed it out. There were really some traces of blood remaining on the floor. Compared to that terrible scene, it wasn't very impressive. However, oh my god, that's not a good description. However, if you calmly thought about it, this definitely indicated the loss of a lot of blood. Okay.
ここにも血だまりがあるよ。
Okay. Definitely was a murder in this room. So what I think is that the bodies were moved into the storehouse. So it wasn't a storehouse murder. And I also don't think that they're actually like... that. I think that there's something... I just can't determine the kill, like how they got killed, because, I mean, how would you be able to just kill, like, a bunch of people without them overpowering you? Like, for example, say if it was, like, a hammer or something, and they charged that, and someone charged at the 6 of them, surely they'd, like, hit a person or two, but eventually someone would, like, shove them or something. I just find it really hard to believe that they all died at the same time, all because of one person.
これは一体
だいぶ時間が経っているように見えます。おそらく昨夜ここで殺されたんだと見ていいでしょう。
そういうことになるんやろな。わしらは昨夜ずっと食堂で話し合いをしとった。
Then why are you still here?
そしてここに何者かが押し入ったに違いない。
The fact that you and Eva are alive is very
父さんた
suspicious.
ちが打ち合わせを抜けて休んだのは何時だっけ？
George sees through this.
昨夜の24時を少し過ぎたくらいの頃や。だからその後にと考えるんが妥当やろな。
Oh, yeah, no, I like those dots. Yeah, so, about that, are you sure? Because I don't think anyone can testify for you.
マジかよ。勘弁してくれよ。お嬢様、しっかり。
Do not
こ
even
れは
make
も
a
う
joke.
さっきの倉庫でこの世の地獄ってやつを拝んじまったから。
Okay, yeah, no, better,
今更このくらいじゃ答
better
えねえぜ。
comment than I thought I was about to make a joke.
そうかよ。よかったな。私は頭がどうにかなっちまいそうだぜ。ここは食堂だぜ。私は毎日ここで食事をして、学校のことをぼやいたり、親父に学校の成績の話をされたり、そういうところなんだぜ。お嬢様、これ以上ここにいるのはよくありません。客間へ戻りましょう。
俺も同感す。秀吉おじさん、この部屋は多分警察にとって重要な意味があると思います。 俺たちが踏み荒らしちまうのはまずいんじゃないですか。
Braddock proposes in a slightly firm voice as, along with Ken, and he grabbed the pail and taking Jessica's shoulder.
バトラさんの言う通りですな。この部屋にこれ以上好んで居続けることはありますまい。
Nanji spoke while looking at everyone's pale faces. Even though that horrible scene in the storehouse felt like something not out of this world, at least then we'd be able to leave to cut ourselves off from that place and run away. Everyone had shared that feeling. However, this dining hall was different. It was in the mansion, the main building of this estate, and as Jessica had said, it should have been one of the most calming places even inside the mansion. It was where all of the relatives had eaten lunch and dinner yesterday. The shock of seeing this place smeared with blood reminds us that horrible spectacle in the storehouse, and forced us to accept that we'd really been able to run away from the scene of the tragedy.
わしも同感や。この部屋には犯人の痕跡が残ってるかもわからんしな。素人のわしらがかき回すべきとちゃうで。はよ出るんや。
Now I'm a professional, I play Danganronpa.
はよはよ。
Hideyoshi also understood the meaning of what Badaru had said and pushed everyone out of the dining hall. The way we were then, looking at the blood any longer would have been too harsh. They keep saying we, but calling it battle. Whose perspective am I in? Because I can see everyone at once. Everyone raced each other out of the dining hall. It was almost as though the last person in the room would be trapped in there all alone. Yes, and now let's go see what Kinzo is up to. He's probably just like, yes, good. Oh, never mind, no Kinzo then. Because he'd probably be like, yes, Beatrice is coming, hooray! Once in the hallway, we lent a hand to Kumasawa, who was still trembling and leaning against the wall, and we all headed back to the parlor together. Then Genji returned.
お、源氏さん、警察に連絡はつきましたか？
それが申し訳ございません。無線機の故障か、それ以外の理由によるものかわかりませんが。
なんや、警察に連絡がつかんのか。電
Wow,
話
you're
も無線も
helpful.
どっちもダメなんか。
申し訳ございません。
Okay, I'm also a little suspicious of Genji right now. That's definitely kinda suspicious here. So, You wanna clear the cousins. I don't think it's Natsue. I don't think it's Kinzo or Nanzo. I just said Kinzo instead of Kinzo. Lol. Kumasawa, her reaction seemed genuine to the board, so I'm gonna say that she is in the road clear. So yeah, I guess we have our 4 main suspects right there.
月曜の朝に船が来ることになっていますので、その船の通信機を
この島には船はないんか。新島の警察署までちょっくら行ってくることはできんのか。
I don't care that it's a typhoon.
秀吉さん、この天気では無理だ。
No, nothing's impossible if you believe in
台
yourself.
風が通り過ぎるまではどうにもなりません。
クラウス様のボートは今修理中で島にございません。ですので月曜の船を待つほかな
Then
い。
build a boat or something.
そんなアホな話があるか。6人も死んだんやで。そして電話も無線も通じず、船も台風が過ぎて船が来るまで、つまり明日の朝までわしらは警察にも連絡できず、この島におれっちゅうことなんか。
ってことはつまり俺たちだけじゃなくおじさんたちを殺した犯人もこの島から出られず。
Yeah, Battle's logic is true.
そういうことになるね。みんなを殺した犯人はまだこの島にいる。
親父たちを殺した奴はこの島から逃げ出せずまだ潜んでやがるってことかよ。
No, they're in the other room trying to find Kinzo. Maybe. Either that or in this room.
くそ見つけ出してやるぜ。警察になんか引き渡すもんか。私がこの手でやっ先にしてやる。
Okay, had finally realized that something odd was happening in the polar. Rather than noticing something odd, it was probably better to say she felt. Yeah, no, she was watching Higurashi, according to someone in my comment section.
おお、
I
ジェ
wish,
シカお姉ちゃん、
I wish then she just starts talking about Higurashi. That'd be awesome.
誰か死んじゃったの？
Okay, yeah, no, not the face to make. The way she spoke was completely calm. Just as though she was talking about someone who had appeared on a television drama, as though it was someone else. Yeah, no, she just watched Miyakasi and she's used to it now. Jessica probably didn't like that, and they were trying to say, can you tell by just by looking at me overwhelmed with grief, she threw it up at Maria.
死んじまったぜ。みんな私の親父もパトラの父さんと母さんも幸田さんもシャノンも、そしてマリアの母さんも。
よすんだジェシカちゃん、悲しいのは君だけじゃない。
マリアさん、ショックだろうが聞いてください。あなたのお母さんがな、死んでしまいました。
ママが死んじゃった？おお。
ああ、誰かに殺されちまった。悲しいだろうがよ。心をしっかり。
何人死んじゃった？
6人だぜ、6人だ。くそあんな残酷なことしやがって。踊ってもんがあるだろうがよ。人間な誰だか知らねえが、犯人は人間じゃねえぜ。
No, the culprit is human. That's what I want you to think,
血の
Jessica.
色が赤いわけがね
うん。犯人は人間じゃない。鍵が選んだ。生贄なだけ。
Oh yeah, Maria was the...
おい、マリア、今、なんて言った？
Maria just said something, but since the words were so remotely separated from the flow and context of the conversation, I couldn't understand them for a second. Yeah, I feel like this is Baru's point of view. When I tried to ask her to repeat it again, I was shocked by the sudden sound of Aunt Natsui's loud voice coming from the entrance to the polar. It looks like Aunt Natsui and Aunt Eva had returned from their trip to see... Yeah, no, it's definitely Baru's point of view.
無線でも連絡できない？こんな時に使えなくて何のための防災無線ですか？
申し訳ございます。毎年保守点検はさせているはずなのですが。
ほら、
Good job
光を
being
チカチカ
useful,
させるみたいな
Genji.
船舶信号ってあるじゃない？そういうので向こうの島に連絡することはできないのかしら？
そのような設備はございません。申し訳ございません。
Surely there must be some kind of, like, escape... Oh, she's laughing. Pushing his shaving coat. Oh, right, she doesn't know. She doesn't know, does she? She just knows that there was blood. Or did someone tell her?
なぜ朝食をこちらに？
ああ、夏日さん、それは後で話す。それよりエヴァ、お父さんはどうなんや？
ご一緒でないところを見ると、このような事態になっても部屋から出ません。
いないわ。部屋は空っぽだったのよ。
What? Oh, that's the tip noise. System, did he... Oh, yeah, he's missing now. How, he disappeared from the study unnoticed. Oh. Wait. Tip... Have I had this button all the time? Does this, like, lead me someplace? Oh my god, there actually is a tip section! This is new information to me. But what was the new tip? I guess it was just character bio being updated, but... I knew that in the beginning it says there was a tips mode, but it looks like there actually is a tip with, like... Yeah, this is just, like, the epitaph. Yeah, so, first Twilight, after 6 shares and keys sacrifice. Second Twilight, those who remain shall tear apart the two who are close. Don't know who is left that is necessarily close. On third Twilight, those who remain shall praise my noble name. On the fourth Twilight, gouge the head and kill. Gouge chest and kill. Okay, there's gonna be a lot of gouging. And on the ninth Twilight, the witch shall revive and none shall be left alive. And on the 10th Twilight, everyone will reach the Golden Land. That's alive.
なんやて？
Oh my god, I thought that was someone speaking for a second.
こ
That
んな時に
music.
どこ行ったんや？
親方様が書斎を出られたというのですか？
そうです。 私も驚いています。いつの間に部屋を出たのやら。あなたたちに心当たりはないのですか？
Not sure. It looked like Gainsey and Ken as he said this. Maybe she was trying to ask whether the servants who served directly under the one-winged eagle knew of a place he might go. However, it was probably the other way around. Their faces made it clear that those who knew Kinzo best realized even more than the rest how impossible it was for him to leave his room.
僕たちにも見当がつきません。
It's probably with
ご存知
Beatrice.
の通り、親方様はあの書斎の中にお休みの場所からご不浄まで全てを設け、親方様があの部屋をお出になることなど
You know what bothers me how Gainsey and Kennen don't have any
考えられ
emotions.
ません。
となると、そのよっぽどのことがあったって考えるのが自然だっちゅう。
まだそうと決まったわけではありません。とにかく気まぐれな方ですから。現状をご存知なく、お一人で散歩をされている可能性もあります。
Yeah, no, great theory and all, but if you remember yesterday, then
仮
you'll
にそうだ
prove
と
that
したら
that's wrong.
一刻も早く現状をお知らせしてご指示を仰がねばなりません。そうね、考えたくはないけど、お父様の身に何かあったのか
Do
もしれ
not
ないし
even
ね。
start.
そのような不吉なことは考えたくもありません。
No one had seen Kinzo since the discovery of those 6 terrible corpses. On top of that, the phones were broken, the radio wouldn't reach anyone, there was no way to contact the police. Apparently the typhoon would leave tomorrow and a boat would come. But until then, no one could really rely on the outside of the island, nor could they escape the island. The tragedy had hit everyone so abruptly that they'd lost all their composure. Everyone felt a heavy silence, everyone was impatient. Even though they needed to do something, they couldn't think of anything. So some of them held their hands in their arms while others got irritated. Right now, no one could explain what was occurring on this island, Rokenzima. Oh wow, that was a weird transition. After that, we ate the breakfast Kumasawa had made, which felt dry and tasteless. Of course, this was right after something like that would happen. No one felt particularly hungry. However, we understood logically that not eating would weaken our bodies. It would also be rude to Kumasawa-san, who made the breakfast. Kumasawa had taken some unusual Western vegetables. Ah yes, time to describe some food in the murder mystery. Though honestly, whenever they describe food, like in any media ever, I just am always hungry after. I'm getting hungry just like glancing at the text. I saw what Goda-san had been planning to cook with those ingredients. Right then I couldn't even imagine it. If I did think about it, I'd be reminded of the way Goda-san died, and a sour taste would fill the inside of my mouth. Everyone pretended to eat for the time being, but of course no one made much progress. Then we began pooling our knowledge of our current situation. First off, 6 people, which included Uncle Kraus, my dad, Kiwi-san, Aunt Rosa, Goda-san, and Senin-san, have been found in the rose garden storehouse as brutally mutilated. Wait. Hold up. What if one of the, like, corpses, or like a couple, weren't identified correctly? Now, I know that's a weird theory, but, like, I mean, the main ones that were, like, focused on by Battler and Jessica were their parents. So, Aunt Rosa, Goda-san, and Senin, those are kind of like other... No, never mind, Senin was actually focused by Hideyoshi. So, Aunt Rosa and Goda-san. And yet we still couldn't contact the police since both the phones and the radio were unusable. So until the typhoons passed, there was nothing we could do. Furthermore, grandfather, who we might have hoped would be able to show a little leadership in this kind of situation, had disappeared some time ago. Goda-san hadn't made me breakfast. Okay, there's a me. Oh my god, I was trying to... I thought that said me and that I was about to burst out laughing. It'd just be like, he hadn't made breakfast, so I'm mad. Oh my... I should not be laughing in this situation, but... Oh my god, I suck at reading. So grandfather's stomach must have been empty. And if he had just been taking a casual walk, we should have been able to hear him whining about how hungry he was by now. And despite that, he hadn't appeared. There was more than a small chance that he had gotten caught up in this crime. According to my aunts, on their way back from Kinzo's study, they'd searched for him, calling out on every floor, but they were unable to find him. Considering the timing of it all, it's only reasonable to assume that this disappearance had something to do with the crime. Yeah, no. The figure died and the rest were probably killed in the dining hall and the painstakingly moved it to the storehouse. So maybe grandfather had already been killed and dragged to some strange pit. That's possible, but highly unlikely. No one actually said that out loud, but this theory seemed extremely convincing.
私たちはお屋敷の戸締まりを確認してきます。お父様も念入りに探さなければなりません。子供たちはこの部屋を出ないように。エヴァさんと秀吉さんは申し訳ありませんが、ここで子供たち、南條先生もお願いいたします。
わかりました。ここでお待ちしています。
Naturally followed the servants Genji-san, Kumasawa-san, and Ken and Kun out the parlor. All that was left was Aunt Eva, Uncle Hideyoshi, Dr. Nanzo, and the four of us children, a total of 7 people.
みんなで仲良くテレビでも見て待ってよな。
That's too happy of
し
a...
かし日曜日の午前中は
That's
ど
too
んな
happy
番
of a
組やっと
reaction
る
when
んや
a murder has just occurred. Uncle Hideyoshi started acting cheerfully, trying to brighten up this gloomy atmosphere.
ろくな番組見る
おそうかマリアちゃんはテレビ見るかじゃあおじさんと一緒に見ような
Maria was the only one who joined in. Even though Maria had been told of her mother's death, she didn't show the slightest flicker in her... That's weird. Was it really normal for a 9-year-old girl like Maria to act so much like a... Okay, yeah, no, time to add another person to the suspect list. Everyone else's mood failed to improve and they each sank absent-mindedly into their sofas.
兄貴、聞いていいか？
なんだい？
さっき倉庫で兄貴はあれ。
Oh, I accidentally had my hand on spacebar. I'm assuming he asked about I saw Sanin, so I'm assuming he asked about like what he was doing with Sanin the other night. Josaniki didn't answer, but he hung his head and closed both of his eyes. There could be no clear response.
よせよパトラ、少しは察しろよ。
だな、悪いことを聞いたぜ。
そうさ、僕だよ。彼女に昨べ求婚したんだ。その時指輪を渡した。明日になったらそれを好きな指にはめて返事としてくれって気ざったらしいことを言ってね。
And that ring had been on the ring finger of Sanin San's left hand.
数年前からシャドウに相談を受けてたぜ。ジョージ兄さんのことでさ。
なんて言ってたのかな。
シャノンは嘘をつくのが下手だったからよ。ジョージ兄さんのことを言ってるのはすぐにバレバレでさ。自分は使用人の身分だけど、男の人の好きそうなものは何かとか、どういう服を着たら喜ぶかとか、そんなことをいろいろとさ。なんつうのか、そのまあ焼けたぜ。
I'm surprised that those two talked because they've kinda had like almost no interaction.
それが婚約指輪を渡されておしまいかよ。
価値観は人それぞれだけどよ、男から求婚されるってのは人生の到達点なんだと思うんだよ。だからきっと昨夜のシャノンは心の底から、いや生まれてから今までの中で一番幸せ。
George Zanicki sighed deeply without raising his head, and maybe tears had risen to his eyes.
シャノンは昨べゲストハウスの当番だったらしいんだ。でもシャノンは僕と一緒にゲストハウスに帰るのを恥ずかしがってお屋敷に行ってしまった。
シャノンの気持ちを察しろよ。婚約指輪をもらえばどんなに予告されてたって普通は舞い上がっちまって頭は真っ白になっちまうぜ。気恥ずかしくて仕方なかったんだろうよ。
それでシャノンは当番でないはずのお屋敷へ行き、そこでゴーダさんの仕事を手伝い事件に巻き込まれてしまった。
Oh, wait, yeah, no, didn't she see butterflies?
僕があの日あの場所で指輪なんか渡さなければシャノンはサヨは事件に巻き込まれ
Wait,
なかった
hold
んだ
up. You don't know that for sure. What if she returned to the guest house?
兄貴、それだけは違うぜ。断じて違う。だからそれ以上泣くんじゃね
バトラー君、そっとしてあげなさい。
After Aunt Eva said that I stopped talking to him, misplaced words of comfort might actually do more harm than good. Jessica sat down next to Aniki and put an arm around him. Maybe only Jessica, who had known about Aniki and Sandin's love since the beginning, who had discussed our relationship with Sandin, could comfort Aniki now. I went over to Aunt Eva and sat down on the opposite sofa.
バトラー君は強いわね。もうだいぶしっかりしているように見えるわよ。
Yeah, no, Battle, like, sure, I am, like, judging some of his reactions, but to be fair, he is doing really good for someone who's literally the sole survivor of his family branch.
まあほら、愛の深さが傷の深さじゃないっすか。
This would probably make better battler sprites where it doesn't look like he's, like, fine with
俺は
things.
別にあんなクソ親父同志の方が知ったことじゃないし、キリエさんは気の毒ですが、まあ
あら、という割にはさっきすっごく大泣きしてたわよ。
まあ育ての親に対する恩はあのくらい泣けば OK かと思いまして。
そのあたりの切り替えの速さやドライなあたりは、あの子は昔から激しく喜んだり悲しんだり怒ったりしたけれど、すぐにケロリと平静を取り戻したわ。
そんなことはないっす。俺だってまだまだ心のショックから立ち直れちゃいません。ただ俺がみんなと違うのは、それによってどういう感情が生み出されるかってことだと思います。
どういうこと？
I've been acting much calmer than George, Nikki, and Jessica. That wasn't because my sadness was any less intense or because I'd already recovered. My sadness was simply getting replaced gradually with a different
悲
emotion.
しいっていうよりは腹立たしいって気持ちなんすよ。どこのドイツがこんなことをしやがったのか。横っ面に一発お見舞いしてやらないことには腹の虫が収まらねんです。
That's what I really wanted to do. I couldn't forgive myself as I just sat there overwhelmed with sadness and hugging my knees.
親父たちが殺されて以降、この島は台風に包まれたままです。つまりこれだけの上等を決めてくれやがった野郎は。
I'm getting like the
そういう
detective
ことになるわね。
narration vibes of I'm going to find the culprit.
今も暗い森のどこかに身を潜めているのかしら。
I felt like I'd had a very similar conversation with Kiwi-san the night. Yeah, you did. That's right. After the letter from the person claiming to be a dress appeared at the dinner table the dinner table. Why did I say diner? We talked about whether or not a 19th person actually. What? I'm just butchering everything now.
エヴァおばさん、この殺人、昨夜のベアトリーチェの手紙と何か関連があるんでしょうかね。
ああ、例の？さあ、どうかしらね。あの手紙はお父様が遺産問題に絡みたくて出した怪文書という見方、それと今朝の事件に関係があるかは今の段階では分かりかねるわね。
あの手紙、本当にベアトリーチェなんて魔女がマリアに渡したんすかね。
まさか全部お父様の仕組んだ茶番でしょ。シャノンちゃんあたりに肖像画のドレスを着させてマリアちゃんを騙したんでしょ。お父様らしい手の込みすぎたいたずらだと思うけど。
昨夜キリエさんとベアトリーチェは実在するんだろうか。キリエさんも俺たち18人の中に
そんなの当然じゃない。この島には私たちしかいないのよ。
Well, I mean, you don't know that. There's like an entire portion of the island that you won't even check out.
なら私たちの中の誰かがベアトリーチェを語ったに決まってるじゃない。
この島には俺たち以外はいないですか。
当然でしょ。私たち以外の誰がここにいるっていうの？ この島には私たちしかいない。18人しかいない。ならベアトリーチェを語るのも18人の中の誰かしかいないじゃない。
Kiryu-san denied the existence of the 19th person by spinning the chessboard around. Even though Aniva hadn't constructed an argument that was complicated, her opinion was at least the same. Except if that's the case, her situation stood to look very ugly. At the time of Beatrice's letter, the whole thing could be passed off as a prank set up by someone or another. However, if we're assuming there's no 19th person, we can't ignore this anymore. In other words,
19人目がいないなら親父たちを殺した犯人も18人の中にいるってことになっちまうじゃないですか。つまり今この屋敷にいる誰かが殺したってことになる。
Aniva smiled meaningfully. It looked like she thought this conclusion should have been obvious from the beginning.
犯人は倉庫の中に6人の遺体を運び込んだわ。
I agree with that.
よく倉庫の中に
I'm
運
in
び
full
込んだわよ
Danganronpa
ね。
mode, even though that's not what I'm playing.
あのシャッターは常に閉められていて施錠されていたそうよ。つまり倉庫内に運び込むにはシャッターの施錠を開ける必要があった。
They could have went through the window and dragged them in. Doing this would cause well, I mean, that would, if anything, just damage their head more, which is something that could have been passable, and then position them in the way that it looked like they'd all been killed in the storehouse, which means that the culprit doesn't necessarily have to be the one with the key.
わかる？
たまたまその日シャッターが開けっぱなしになってた可能性は。
Okay, that's a different
使用人
reasoning.
たちは常に閉めていると言ってたわ。
Wait, who was on servant duty for that? If it was Sanin, then that could also be right. I definitely agree with the laws like that the killer necessarily didn't have to have the key.
つまり鍵を使用人室から持ち出さなくては倉庫は絶対に開けられない。
鍵は使用人室の一つしかないんすかね。
源氏さんはそうだと言ってるわ。ということは犯人はそのたった一つの倉庫の鍵のありかを
I
知っ
don't
ていて
agree
持
with
ち
that
出した。
logic.
さっきカノン君が使用人室に鍵を戻すとこ
Yeah,
ろを見
sure
た。
he could have returned the key, but I
壁に
mean,
びっしり
those
と鍵
windows
が
in
か
the
けられ
back
てい
looked
て
a little
と
suspicious,
ても素人
and
に
there's also the
ど
possibility
こ
of
に何がか
picking
け
the
てあるのか
lock.
わからなかった。
I mean, like, surely the culprit is skilled enough to, like, arrange all this, so they must surely know how to pick a lock.
犯人はその中から倉庫の鍵を見事選び出したの。しかも札も何もついていない鍵を手にしてバラ庭園裏にある倉庫の鍵だと理解した。ついでに言うと倉庫の場所すら理解していた。もっとはっきり断言
Not
する。
necessarily.
犯人は使用人室の内部にも熟知している。
Her argument was an extremely plain and clear. If the bodies had been found thrown somewhere in the bushes of the rose garden, there wouldn't have been much to go on. However, if there was only one key to the storehouse in the servant room, and it was sealed to such a large group of keys, a novice would not be able to tell them apart. This means the culprit was someone who went into the servant room a lot and was familiar with the location of the keys. The family members didn't normally go into the servant room, which meant that
ってことは使用人の誰かが犯人。
悪いけどそれ以上はおばさんも言えないわよ。
no, but that's wrong. Danganronpa counter. So where is it? Because like that not necessarily true here. I don't know. I feel like there's multiple ways to do it. Like, why would they go to all the trouble of like putting the bodies in there if they'd want to hide their identity?
なんすか。
犯人、犯人たちは複数でそして十分な武装をしていたと考えられる。だってそうでしょ。食堂にいた兄さんたち4人を一度に襲って殺し合計6
Yeah,
人
no,
分
that's what
の
I
遺
was
体を
talking about.
ようようとバラ庭園の向こうの倉庫まで。これだけのことを単独犯で行えるはずもないでしょ。
Well, I mean, they're in the dining hall. Is it possible that they had like poisoned food? I mean, Goda was serving there, so all someone would have to do is mess with the food. And no, it wouldn't. All you'd have to do is just put poisoned. Look, I mean, I know that that wasn't shown in the bodies, but we didn't get to see anything. All we saw was that their heads were smashed, and that's it. So, I mean, yeah, no, if your head is smashed, then you can't really tell if they've been poisoned or not. I think my logic's on the money here.
使用人の人たちがみんなグルだろうって言ってんすか
That is another possibility.
静かになさいな。憶測で言っちゃ悪いわよ。それにもし本当にそうだったらどうするつもり？彼らは私たちを生かして返さないでしょうね。しかも兄さんたち4人をやすやすと殺した相手なのよ。
Didn't seem like fighters though.
今この部屋に残っていてまともに戦えそうな人間はうちの家族の3人にせいぜいバトラ君で4人ってところ。
I'd say Jessica too. Jessica's
状
good.
況は昨晩と何も変わらない。つまり犯人にとって残る私たちを皆殺しにするなんて簡単なことなのよ。
Yeah, that is true. I've been playing detective with Aunt Eva, trying to expose the person who had killed Dad and the rest of the police did. If only I could clearly penetrate the culprit's identity and stick to the proof in their face. I'd been so sure that just like one of those detective movies, the culprit would then give up and surrender. However, the culprit would only surrender if there was no way for them to fight back. The culprit behind this crime on the island was far from helpless, and might even be able to massacre all of the remaining people here. And on top of that, this island was like a giant closed room cut off from the outside of the world by the typhoon. Yeah, you're right. So they had a full day until tomorrow to kill Scheming Kim, which means they can do it again. To the contrary, we were at the stage where we had been scared stiff since playing detective might displease the culprits and cause them to commit another mass murder.
あくまでも可能性の問題よ。でも私は使用人の人たちをまだ信
Well,
用
there's
で
like
きない。
18 people on this island, so they just have to do that 4 more
それに
times.
私は使用人だけを疑ってるわけじゃない。さらに黒幕がいるかもしれないと思ってるわよ。
黒幕？どうしてですか？
勘よ。使用人は書いて字
Yeah,
に
and you were voiced by the mastermind from the last thing, at least I think. I mean, your voice sounds a
誰
lot
かに
like.
使用され
So,
て手足とな
I
る
mean,
存在よ。
possible.
殺されたのは後宮家の親族ばかりならその結果で利害が発生する人間が関わるのは当然。
I mean, the only people that can do that is you. That was plain and clear. The Ushiromya family had been right in the middle of discussions of how to contribute the inheritance when grandfather died. And the case followed the standard form of any classic mystery novel. The crime was definitely caused by someone with ties to the Ushiromya family and who was involved in the inheritance problem. Aunt Eva had probably read a few books in that genre herself. Her argument may have had a few blind assumptions in it, but it was still a standing conclusion that anyone might have reached. I think most people would end up suspecting the servants, even if they used different reasoning to get there. Especially the story about the key to the Sutter. That made it very easy to suspect that one of the servants was involved.
だからなぜか気に入らねえんすよね。
気に入らないって何の話？
あ、いえいえ、こっちの話っす。
I tried to dodge your question by joking, but I couldn't erase the scene of unease welling up inside me. After all, her conclusion was such an easy one to reach. A conclusion that anyone could reach. And I just couldn't be satisfied with that. If I tried spinning the chessboard around like I'd learned from Kiri-san, this was exactly why a servant couldn't possibly... Yeah, he learned, hooray. The servants really were the culprit. They wouldn't hide the bodies in a place connected to themselves. Why on earth would they use the rose garden set if they were the ones in charge of the key that could unlock it? And the police would probably immediately pursue whoever had been in control of the key. It's possible that some other facts might come to light as a result. The more I think of the servants as the culprits, the less reason they had to carry the bodies into the storehouse. But what if they knew we'd think that, and put the corpses in the storehouse for that very reason? No, that's completely impossible. When the police come and inspect the scene of the crime, they'll probably be able to uncover many things. No matter how carefully the culprits carried out that murder, some traces will definitely be found. In other words, they had everything to lose and nothing to gain. If you think about it, this way it looks like this murder game from the culprit side. It's hard to imagine why they want to call attention to the corpse. Once the corpses were found, it could result in someone sending a report to the police, or make the omitting people more cautious, or it might make the survivors start to search for the culprit. None of these things would make life easy for the culprit. It's just like the words of the main character's mother in a novel I recently read called... Oh my god, yes, they finally did a reference. Well, I mean, this entire thing kinda is very reminiscent of Higurashi, with like that everyone's getting along and then there's a murder, but finally a reference. Ooh, and they even use the title too, I'm surprised. Every story needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Eliminating that beginning is essential for the perfect crime. Right now we don't know... Oh, wait, yeah, no, that was the words of Keiichi's mom in Tadaragasi Hen. Right now we don't know where grandfather is. We don't know if he's already become a victim or if he's one of the culprits. But this state of confusion might be beneficial to the killer. The culprit had absolutely nothing to gain by showing us the bodies in such an obvious way and make us realize that there's been a murder. In fact, this was the perfect place to spin the chessboard around. In other words, showing us the corpses in such a flashy way must be the culprit's goal in and of itself. So at the very least, to the culprit, the appearance of 6 corpses there meant more than the deaths themselves. In other words, the culprit wanted this murder on display. To whom? To us. This was a message. The culprit's trying to shove something in her face. Yeah, he's trying to threaten, like, this is what will happen. At this point in time, the vulgar mass murder isn't making me feel anything except a malice directed towards all of us. Malice towards all of us. Is it? Each one of the survivors had some kind of connection to one of the 6 victims. Uncle Krause's death brought Jessica to the grief of losing a family member. The deaths of Dad... No, go to, yeah, but not with Eva and Hideyoshi. Everyone now in this town had received an equal amount of sadness. On Eva was so the servants were in cahoots. But then, how could you explain the deaths of Goda-san and Senin-san? Well, they were probably serving, and then the grief caused by the 6 deaths hit everyone but on... Yeah, that's what I just said. Even Eva, who was directly suspicious of the servants, had acted as though she herself was beyond suspicion, could not be ruled out as a suspect. In the first place, she was able to argue that the servants were suspicious by focusing on the Sutter's key. But if you look at it from a perspective of motive, who would gain, Eva's name rises to the top of that list. Everything is frozen. Oh.
バトラ君が何を考えてるか。
嫌だな。内緒にしててくださいよ。あんなことやこんなことで頭をいっぱいにしてたなんて。
私がこの殺人で一番得をする。
Oh no.
どうせ疑われるだろうから、先に自己申告しておくわ。
I tried to dodge the issue by joking around, but apparently it didn't work.
遺産は兄弟の数で分割する。でも今や4兄弟は私一人。後宮家の全財産は全て私のものになる。
You're just admitting it.
秀吉おじさんが聞いたら予算か言えばシャレにならんっていうところっすね。
ごめんね。どう取り繕ったってどうせ疑われるだろうからふざけただけよ。だからこの殺人は私の立場から見れば私を疑わせるためのものでは困ったことに。
Yeah, it is a leak.
聞かせてもらってもいいですか？夕べのことを。
バトラ君たちも知っている通り、兄弟が遺産をどう食いちぎり合うか。でも何時まで続いたかは知らない。私と主人は朝が早かったからね。もう眠くて。そしてゲストハウスに戻って休んだわ。
それを秀吉おじさん
Yeah, maybe a servant saw them.
別にエヴァおばさんを疑ってるわけじゃないっすよ。
あら、どうだか。証明になるかわからないけれど、ゲストハウスに戻ってきた時、源氏さんに出迎えを受けてタオルはいるかと聞かれた。だから私たちがゲストハウスに戻ってきた時間は。
Oh, that's an alibi. That's a good
私の
alibi
仮説通
then.
り使用人たちもグルなのだとしたらこんなのアリバイにならないけど
Oh,
ね。
yeah.
うん
Never mind.
確
Never
か
mind,
に
take that
そうっ
back.
すね。ってことは俺今真犯人と推理ごっこをしてるってこと
でも私の名誉のために言わせてもらうけど、遺産目当てだったならこんな変な殺人はしないわよ。
Huh.
だって遺産相続権を喪失させるだけならどんな死に方だって構わない。むしろ事故死に見せかけた方がスマートでしょ。使用人たちを抱き込んで周到に計画していたならなおさらそうするでしょうよ。
確かにそうっすね。営利で人を殺すならそれは常に殺人に見せるべきではない。
そういうことだからおばさんは警察には黒幕扱いされて散々調べられるでしょうね。やだやだ。
Aunt Eva shrugged with a bitter smile. It was just as easy to suspect Aunt Eva as it was to suspect the servants. So if we spin the chessboard around, oh my god, stop saying that. Does that make it impossible for the culprit to be her, suspicious as he is? However, if that sort of argument always works, then motive can never help us in any way. No, that can't be right. Knowing the motive must give us powerful clues towards knowing the culprit. That's why murders from old time periods disguise crimes in complicated ways, clearly preventing their motives from being discovered. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Every time I spin the chessboard around, it keeps flipping from front to back and back to front. Are my thoughts bringing me closer to the truth, or are they steering me away? Okay, black screen. Aunt Eva didn't want to talk any more than that, so I folded my arms and headed to the window to cool my head a little. As I looked over the pole, I saw George and Nikki and the others gathered talking. It looked like they were talking about the magic circles that had been painted onto the shutter. As Uncle Hideyoshi thought back to that, he started drawing the shape in the margins of Maria's notebook. I see, since Maria was the second one to grandfather and knowledge of the occult, she must understand what that meant. Wait, how long have I been recording for? I wonder. 56 minutes? Wow, it feels like I've been recording for a while. I'll go for a little while longer.
多分こんな感じだったと思うで。十字架をアレンジしたみたいなマークが書かれとったんや。そしてこんな感じで外周の円を取り囲むように妙な文字がびっしり書き込まれていて、アルファベットとかそういうのとちゃうで。あれはよく言う古代文字とかいうやつや。
あと円周部の頂点に小さな丸を5つ十字状に並べ、それぞれを直線で結んだようなマーク。
ああ、確かにそんなのも書いてあったで。うん。図形的には間違いなくこれや。細かい文字はわからんが、配列はほぼ同じや。
Everyone was staring down at the same, so I stared down at it too. From what I heard, this had been painted on the shutter to the storehouse from some material that looked like board. I see, this sure is unsettling.
こんなわけのわかんねえもんを書きたがるのはじいさん。まったくどこに行っちまったんだ。とっ捕まえて意味を聞き出してやりたいぜ。
Jessica's voice contained impatience and anger. She hadn't gone so far as to say grandfather was the culprit, but she seemed sure that grandfather knew something about the culprit's background. Of course, if you were searching for a link connecting the Ushiromya family to the occult, 10 out of 10 people would think of grandfather. Also, to a person who knew nothing of the occult, this strange Wait. Hold up, wasn't... Characters... Yeah, a coat and black. Yeah, no, Maria's definitely a suspect. Which meant that this might have been something addressed to grandfather. That's right, and the reason the crime was shown to the survivors was so they'd find this. In that case, where had grandfather, the essential recipient of this message, disappeared off to?
こんな図形に何か心当たりはあるかい？
Maria looked at the shape with a serious face. Maybe she was enthusiastic because this was her area of expertise. However, her appearance was that of someone separated from the events at hand, as though this thing hadn't been drawn on the shutter closed around her mother's corpse.
僕の第一印象ではどこか外国の十字章に似たデザインだなって思ったかな。
ああ、確かにこんなデザインや。ということはその どこぞの国と何
Why
か
are you
関係があ
talking
るんか
about this?
その国の十字章はもとも
Like,
と
it
聖
surely
地
has
巡
to
礼
do
者を
with
守る
like
ための
witches.
騎
Like,
士修道士たちの
remember the
紋章だっ
letter.
たそうですな。
つまりこの魔法陣には宗教的な意味があるってことかよ。ますますにちんぷんかんぷんだぜ。
When I looked over at all of them preparing to jump into the discussion, something shocked me. Oh. Maria was smiling in an eerie, incomprehensible expression on her face. It was almost as if she was making fun of everyone's ignorance. It was an expression I wouldn't have dreamed to find on Maria's face. And she laughed. No, oh my god, no. This is not good. This is like Rena 2.0. Was something I didn't want to believe was possible, even though I was looking at it in front of my eyes. Oh.
全然違うよみんな。
Oh my god,
こん
okay.
なの見てわかんないかな。
While everyone was busy being scared out of the wits, Maria kept on cackling happy by herself. After a while, that laugh was suddenly abruptly cut off, but her expression was still looked like it belonged to someone completely different from Maria.
これは太陽の7の魔法陣だよ。書かれてる文字はヘブライ語。貸して。
ああ。
Maria stole the writing materials from the stunned Hideyoshi's hand. She then started drawing another magic circle with a rustle right next to the one Hideyoshi had drawn.
ね、こんな図形だったんじゃないかな。
そんな図形だった。
マリア、すごいな。さすが詳しいぜ。
Jessica tried to smooth things over by praising Maria. Maybe she wanted to confirm that this was still the Maria we all knew as well, but Maria didn't answer in any way particular. Maria began swiftly writing unfamiliar characters in the corners of the same. When Uncle Hideyoshi and Dr. Nanzo saw them, their eyes immediately began to open wide.
天地と左右に書かれているのは風化水道を司る天使たちの名。カサン、アレル、フォルラク、そしてタリ、そして斜め四方には4代の王たちの名。アリエル、セラフ、タルシス、ケルブ。合ってる？
Even if they hadn't been able to correctly write what they'd seen, while they were once again something identical, it wasn't difficult for them to realize that the two were the same. When Maria asked them whether it matched, Uncle Hideyoshi and Dr. Nanzo nodded over and over again.
間違いない。そうや。確かにこんな文字、なんでこんなん書けるんや。
あと演習部にも文字が書かれておりました。
わかってね。こうでしょ。
Maria quickly began to surround the circumference with more Hebrew writing.
旧約聖書の詩編第116編の16節と17節だよ。聖書くらい読んでなきゃ。
Acting as though knowing this was only common sense, Maria laughed. For a while, everyone, including me, was at a loss for words. A little later, George and Nikki returned to his senses and Soy managed to speak.
すごいね。驚いたよ。それでこの魔法陣にはどんな意味があるんだい？
太陽の力を借りる魔法陣だよ。黄金で描き、護符にして身につけたる者はいかなる牢獄であろうとも束縛から逃れ、
束縛から逃れ、自由を得られる意味深だぜ。
この束縛という意味は何も肉体的なものだけを、だから縛られて牢屋にいる人ばかりに意味があ
Okay,
るわけじゃ
wow,
ないよ。
actual, like,
し
wow.
がみや逃れ
Okay,
る運命
Maria.
など精神的な束縛からの解放も意味してるんだよ。
しがらみや逃れ得ぬ運命、これまた意味深だな。
しかしさっぱりわからん。それとあの6人の遺体とどんな関係がある？束縛からの解放どころか殺された上に倉庫に閉じ込められてたんやで。
別にその6人のために魔法陣が描かれ、魔法陣のために6人はそこにいるんでしょう。お気の毒だよ。
どういう意味だい？
Yeah, that's a good question. Maria lifted up her pointer finger and wiggled it as if she was making fun of us.
それは演習部に書いてるよ。読めないかな。詩編第116編16節と17節。読んであげるよ。 主は私の枷を解かれました。私はあなたに感謝の生贄を捧げ、主の皆を呼ぶでしょう。
ねって何を言ってるのかさっぱりだぜ。
生贄だってのか。
If what Maria had just what allowed was a vital part of the magic circle, then it was something that sacrifices had to be offered in order for this magic circle to be effective. So human sacrifices had been offered inside the storehouse where the magic circle had been drawn. A herpy later, everyone else seemed to reach the same conclusion. Some people were shocked and others spat out this was insane as they punched their knees. This was starting to get incredibly disturbing, and we couldn't accept it or understand it. I don't care what kind of magic circles or curses other people believe in, I won't pick a fight with them. But did they really kill Dad and the rest of the sacrifices for crap like that? I just couldn't stand that feeling. Compared to this, I preferred when we were disgusted by the theory about the fight over the inheritance. As I started getting pissed off with a feeling between anger and sadness, I broke from the circle everyone was in and returned once again to the window. Something had gone insane since yesterday. There was that letter from the witch Beatrice that Maria had read aloud at last night's dinner. Ever since that point, it feels like like this whole mansion and the whole island, I've been getting more and more firmly locked into some kind of bizarre world. That's right. When I think back on it, the letter was an invitation from the witch. The rule of the nighttime island has invited us inhabitants of the day into another world. The phone and the radio have been interrupted and this island was set off by the typhoon, so you really could call this place another world cut off from the real one by now. Yeah, as this island is now, it's perfectly normal for a witch to send us letters for human sacrifices to be offered up for the sake of the magic circles. So what will happen next? Will some weird people wearing goat masks start doing the Bon Festival dance or something? Ah, it's hopeless, I don't get it. The inside of my head's all screwed up and I don't even know what to think. Anger, sadness, the opposing emotions all swirled up together and they started to suck me in. Unable to resist, I could do nothing but cover my eyes with my hands and trust in my mind and body as I started getting sucked in. And we are going to end here. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please make sure to like, subscribe, it's greatly appreciated. And yeah, I shall see you guys in the next one. Bye.